Hi, good day everyone. In this session, we are going to discuss about encryption. So encryption is applicable in various level. Okay, you can apply that to the data, especially when it is getting stored, and you can also apply it to the data when it is being accessed or when the data is in the transit from one system to another system or one application to another application. So there are several types of encryption that are available for your disk especially. So we will start with understanding the encryption that are available in the disk, and there is encryption that is available at your storage account, and by default the storage service encryption will get enabled. Before we get into the storage service encryption, we will try to understand how the layered approach will help you to secure your data when it is getting stored in your virtual machine. So either it is your operating system or your disk. Okay, so there are various levels of encryption. So now at the operating system level, okay, so there are different OS level encryption that you can do. You can use the native technologies, or you can also go with third-party technologies on your operating system. So there are variety of encryption ciphers and technologies tools available. For your Windows, you might have heard about the BitLocker technology that is available on your Windows operating system. Similarly, on your Linux, you have your DMCrypt, which can help you to encrypt and decrypt your data. There are two varieties of technologies that are available, like your symmetric keys. With one key, you will be able to both encrypt as well as decrypt. In a lot of the cloud environment, we use asymmetric key, where there will be two keys involved. One public key, which will be stored on the cloud side or on the system side, and there will be a key that will be given like a private key, which will be on the customer side, or the client will use it for unlocking. So there will be two different keys involved. So there are two different methodologies through which you can encrypt and decrypt using the same key. You can do it in the symmetric concept, and in the asymmetric concept, you will have to have two different keys to do that. Now, at Azure level, you can also do the same level of encryption. So we call it as Azure Disk Encryption, or we call it as ADE. So this is the concept which we are going to see practically now, and in the storage session we will also understand how the server side encryption works, or how we can enable the other options like the server side encryption. So we also have this encryption at the hardware level, or the server or host level, right? We will also see how do we do that. And Microsoft has recently allowed us to enable confidential disk encryption, but this method is only available in some of the confidential VM types, virtual machine instance type. I think there are a couple of instance type that supports this, like DCA, yes, version 5, and similarly there is one more version, EC. So these are all confidential compute instance type that supports the um, confidential VM instance type that supports the confidential disk encryption. So this is mainly it binds the disk encryption keys to your virtual machine, and it leverages your hardware technology called trusted platform module that will help you to encrypt and decrypt at the hypervisor level, at the host operating system level. This confidential disk encryption will be used. Currently, this technology is mainly used for your operating system OS level, but not for the data level yet. So mostly it is at the OS level, and it can help you secure your protocol and bypass the hypervisor and the host operating system. So confidential VM can help you with the encryption for your confidential VM instance type. So this is a method that is more specific to some instance type. Encryption at host, I will show you how do we go about it. So when you go to the VM creation, okay, so when you are creating a new virtual machine, you get an option to go and enable that or even after the VM is created, you can also enable it. If you go to the disk section, you'll see it at the right top here. So encryption at host, it encrypts the hardware level, the host level content. Okay, so if you talk about the local hardware, server hardware, where you are getting the content, see in Azure, we have multiple different disks that get assigned to your system. So if you look at here, there are various disks, your operating system disk that generally comes from your Azure storage account or storage service in a binary large object format, in a blob format. And the D drive, which is a temporary disk or ephemeral disk, is generally on the local server hardware, where you get a lot of SSD disks that will be used as a temporary disk, and the caching or the temporary content can be configured in the D drive. So if you want to do the encryption at the host level, where your temporary drive, ephemeral drive, and all the connections going via the host, you can also enable the encryption at the host level, whereas your temporary disk and the ephemeral disk, and including your operating system and the data disk, can also be encrypted. The caches and also the flow from the system will also be encrypted. So that is a good option which you can enable. And generally we go with platform managed key, which is nothing but Microsoft managed key. Customer don't have to manage the key in general. So you can also enable this encryption at the host level. This can help you a virtual machine that can enhance your Azure disk storage server encryption to ensure that even your temporary disk as well as the disk caches are encrypted at rest, and the flow to the storage behind the storage cluster, it will all be encrypted. Okay, so this is a very nice option. And in general, when you go and create a storage account or in your disk storage, this SSE option is enabled by default. Okay, storage service encryption or server side encryption is enabled by default. You don't have to explicitly do anything. And generally, we call it as encryption at rest or Azure storage encryption. Or encryption at rest. So that when the data is getting stored in your storage account or in your storage cluster, your operating system and the data disk will be encrypted, and it will be stored in a encrypted format. And when you are configuring it with the data encryption set DES, okay, it supports customer managed keys as well. So I'll show you how do we go about it. There are options, and I'll show you practically how you can enable these options, and especially the Azure disk encryption, which is encrypting the disk at the disk level. We can just do it. See, before that, I will also show you how do we go and enable at the OS level. What is the option and where exactly we can do it. See, if you log into any of your Windows operating system, if you go to control panel, or if you just type BitLocker, okay, it will open up the control panel BitLocker menu, and here you can just go and turn on your BitLocker for your C drive as well as for your temporary drive. And this is at your operating system level. Even if you want to have a TPM trusted platform module enabled, you can also enable it within your operating system. Now at the Azure platform level, if you want to do an encryption of the Azure disks, you can also encrypt it, and this is going to help protect and safeguard your data when there is a organizational security and compliance requirement or commitment. So generally, why we go and enable encryption. See, encryption is a little overhead for your system. Definitely, there will be some level of performance demand by this encryption and decryption activity. But then the main reason is to it helps protect and safeguard your data for meeting organizational security, legal, and compliance requirement. See, data is the very important as stuff for customer, right? It is the customer's information, so you have to enable it. And Azure disk encryption, it is a zone resilient service from Microsoft, which means like even if one data center is going down, your disk will still be encrypted, because this AD technology is zone resilient. It is scattered across multiple availability zone in the region. It can encrypt both OS and the data disks for your Azure virtual machine. And behind the scene, it leverages the de-encrypt feature for Linux and the BitLocker feature for Windows. So ADE is very much can be integrated into your key vault. I'll show you the demo on how you can enable this Azure disk encryption. And prior to that, I will also kind of explain you what are the difference between these options that are listed here. Okay, so if you just go to the comparison, okay, so you have Azure disk encryption, you have the encryption at host, and you have the confidential disk encryption. So there are multiple four different options that we have. I've excluded the OS level option, which is something you can just directly log into your operating system and do. So if you're talking about storage server side encryption, okay, so you can use it for encryption at rest for both operating system and data. So it is applicable for all the four options, including confidential disk encryption, ADE, and encryption at host. And for the temporary disk, if you want to enable encryption, you have to enable at the host level, or you can use the Azure disk encryption. So it can help you to encrypt the temporary disks as well. And if you want to encrypt the caches, okay, so if you want better performance, you generally enable caching on your confidential VM or on your Azure virtual machine. So this is generally not supported on your storage service encryption. So if the customer wants even the temporary disk, the caches to be encrypted, so you have to choose between encryption and host or Azure disk encryption. So that is the option which will help you to do it. And when the customer want to have their own customer managed key and they want to have the disk encryption set, I will show you how to create a disk encryption set and encrypt it. And even if you want the data flow from the compute layer to the storage layer to be encrypted, so you have to go for encryption at the host. So encryption at host is one of the latest feature, but it supports encryption of OS disk, data disk, temporary disk, caching, data flow. Complete encryption can be done end to end using your encryption at host as well as your Azure disk encryption. So what is the limitation of Azure disk encryption? See, Azure disk encryption, it generally looks for a premium vault and it does not use your virtual machine CPU. Okay, whereas your Azure encryption at host, it generally does not use your virtual machine CPU because it is enabled at your physical hardware level, server level. So it is going to use to your base hardware CPU. It will not use your virtual machine CPU. But then here, the Azure disk encryption, it is going to consume some virtual machine CPU and it will not work for your custom Linux images. So if you are a customer and you have created a custom Linux image, then obviously you have to go and log into your operating system and then enable the encryption. So this ADE will not support that, and enhanced key protection is not available on your first three option. It is purpose created for confidential disk encryption. And whenever you're going and checking the Microsoft Defender report, okay, so this particular Azure disk encryption and encryption at host can be monitored, and it will tell you whether you have encrypted your disk or not. So on a high level, so this will help you to decide on what would be your best option for enabling encryption of your disk. Now, going to your Azure virtual machine, okay, so if I want to enable encryption, so first thing we need to create a key vault, and this key vault is where we can go and store your keys for your Azure Virtual Machine encryption. See, Azure Key Vault is a cloud service. It is a managed service where you can store the keys, the secrets, the certificates. Even you can store the password, credential, certificate for your application, and it eliminates the need for the developers to store security information in their code. So your code can be safe, so it won't be vulnerable for attack. And this is very nice, and it allows you to centralize the storage of your application secret. So it is also Federal Information Processing Standard level 2 validated. So FIPS 140 level 2 is generally recommended for some of the customer legal requirements. So it is already FIPS secure, and it uses the HSM module, hardware security module, to back your keys, to store your keys in a safer way. So let me go and create a key vault. This is where we will be storing our encryption key. I can just select the resource group and I can just say stan key vault 002. And then if you want to have a better pricing tier, you can just go for it. So premium is generally recommended for high-end systems and confidential system. And you can also enable soft delete to restore your keys if in case it gets accidentally deleted. And you can just go next. And then if you want to use this for your Azure Disk Encryption and Azure Virtual Machine, and if you're planning to deploy it using ARM template, you can also enable these three options and you can review and create it. But if in case you are purposefully using it only for Azure Disk Encryption, you can also go and use it for Azure Disk Encryption. So let it get validated and you can just create it. So this is the first step towards your key vault creation. Once the key vault is created, you can just go and create a key for your system. Okay, so you can just go and create a key. That is the next step in this particular procedure. Okay, so once the key vault is created, you can just go and create a key. So I'll show you here. Okay, I have a demo key vault which is already there. So here you can just go to the keys and then you can generate a key. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, if you already have generated a key from online tools or some Microsoft operating system or different tool, you can import it. If you already have a key, you can also restore it from the backup. But I'm going to create a new one, stand key 002. And then I can just leave the default. If you want to set an expiry date or if you want to do a auto renewal, you can also enable it. Okay, I'll just go and create it. Now, once after you create it, this particular key has to be accessed from your Azure virtual machine. So in order for that to happen, you have to create a disk encryption set, okay, which can connect your virtual machine to your Azure key here. So how do we do that? If I just go to my virtual machine, okay, so I have to go and search for disk encryption set. Okay, so you can go and create a disk encryption set. And this is mainly for your encryption keys to be accessed from your Azure managed disk. And this is mainly you can access the key vault and key. There are two uh, type of keys that we can have. One is the platform managed key. By default, all your encryption are protected using the PMK platform managed keys. And as a customer, if you want to have control on the keys that we use for encryption, you can also create customer managed keys, CMK. Okay, so I'll show you both options. Now, if I want to create a this encryption set, I can just say stand disk encryption set 002. And then if I want to store it in Azure Key Vault, and if I want to link it in a particular key, I can just go and select it. So this is what I was talking about. So if I want to use double encryption, both platform managed key and customer managed key, I can also do it. And if I'm creating it for confidential disk encryption, I can select the third option. But I'm going for the customer managed key, and I can select which key vault to use. And then what is the key that I want to access from my virtual machine, I can just select it. See, you can also create a key vault here if in case you want to create it. Okay, so at times you might have to give a key vault contributor permission. I'll show you how it looks like. So stand key 002. Okay, I can just select the current version. If you have multiple versions, you can go for it. Okay, fine. Let me just review and create it. So once after this is done, you can use this disk encryption set to be accessed from your Azure virtual machine. So I'll show you the flow here. I'll explain the flow. Okay, so first thing you have to create a key vault. Okay, and then from the key vault, if you want to use that particular key for encryption and decryption from your managed disk or Azure virtual machine disk, you have to create a disk encryption set that will combine which disks are going to use which keys and from which key vault. Okay, so there is a three-step procedure that is involved for data encryption procedure. So now let this bit get created. And what you can do is you can just go to your virtual machine and then on your virtual machine, see, generally it has to be stopped and deallocated. If the virtual machine is running, you might not be able to do it for your operating system disk. So I'll show you. So the option will be grayed out here. If you go to the encryption, if the VM is running, it will not be available. So either you have to deallocate the system virtual machine, or you have to detach the disk from your virtual machine. There are two options. Okay, now I have another virtual machine which is already um, stopped, deallocated. See, even if you go and create a new disk, you can also um, do this. So if I just give it a name, data disk 1, and then if I go to the drop down, okay, so it will give me the option to select which encryption key that I want to use for my customer managed key. I can just select that, and then I can encrypt it. For example, if I want to use this, I can just select it and protect my data disks. For example, if I want to do it for my operating system disk, then I have to wait for the virtual machine to um, be deallocated, and you have to do for it. But if it is data disk, you can just do it live online, as I have showed you how to do it from the drop down option. It gives you the option to select the platform managed key. This is the data encryption or disk encryption set, which is Microsoft managed. Whereas if you want to have a customer managed key, then this is how you have to select and update it. Now going back to the other virtual machine. So here for your operating system, if you want to encrypt using customer managed key, select this disk and go to encryption, and here now the option will be enabled for us to go and select it from the drop down. See, I have just selected the created the disk 0002 encryption set, and it's just about saving it on this particular system. Now sometimes you might have some access challenges when you are trying to map it or allocate it. So what you have to do in such cases, you have to go to your key vault and then select the particular key vault, and here go to the access control or permission. So you can just add a particular role assignment for your identities. So here you have something called key vault administrator. So if you are using a managed identity or user identity, what you can do is you can just select this particular key vault administrator, and you can just provide permission to the specific resources that we have created. For example, if you want to assign it to disk encryption set, you can just give the permission to those managed identity as a key vault administrator, so that it gets all the necessary permission. So this is how you have to generally provide permission to the identities that it is going to be used by the disk encryption set. If in case you are receiving error, you have to do that. And even you can also assign role permission in order for effective access. So this is how you can go and encrypt your system at your Azure disk level, or if you want to enable the protection at your host level, you can also go to the disk here, and then under this particular section, and when the VM is getting created also you can do it, or you can just select the additional setting and you will get option to enable the encryption at host level. So virtual machine should have to be stopped, deallocated for the host level encryption to be enabled. So if you want to do it at the server level, what you can do is you can just go to the virtual machine, or you can just see it from this machine. Okay, this is already deallocated. Go to disk and go to additional setting, and you will be able to enable the encryption at the host level for your stopped virtual machine. So you can just select it and then save it if you want to enable at the hardware level, server hardware level. So this is how you can do it. You can enable protection. So encryption is a layered approach. You can enable encryption at various level. You can do it at the storage cluster level, or you can do it at the server hardware level, or you can do it at the Azure disk level, or you can also do it at your operating system level. So if the customer is looking for the maximum security or best practice if you want to apply that, then you can go and use this layered approach to bring the security for your virtual machine disk. Thank you.